I burst out of my front door, still half groggy, my travel mug of lukewarm coffee sloshing precariously. The bird feeder. Oh no, not just the bird feeder. It looked like a tiny, fluffy bomb had gone off in Mrs. Henderson's prize-winning azaleas. Feathers everywhere, a couple of dazed-looking sparrows hopping lopsidedly, and then I saw him. Patches. Patches? Buddy, what's wrong? I muttered, my voice still thick with sleep. He was one of our regulars, a calico a few of us in the neighborhood unofficially looked out for. Usually he'd be weaving around my ankles, purring like a tiny outboard motor. Now he was just limp, lying there in the dew-soaked grass, his breathing shallow. You look rougher than a Monday morning after a 3-day weekend. Panic, cold and sharp, sliced through the morning haze. I knelt, my coffee forgotten on the porch steps. His fur was damp, and when I gently touched him, he let out a weak, pitiful meow that just about broke my heart. This wasn't just ate something bad. This was targeted. My eyes scanned the area. Further down, near old Mr. Grumble's prized and perpetually cat-scratched picket fence, I saw another lump of fur. Mittens, the tuxedo. Not moving. Oh, hell no. My mind, usually a fairly calm place that mostly worried about whether I had enough milk for cereal, went into overdrive. This was a disaster. A full-blown, 4-alarm feline catastrophe. I carefully, so carefully, scooped Patches into my arms. He felt too light, too fragile. First call, obvious call, my sister Chloe. The phone rang twice before she picked up. Her voice already in that no-nonsense, clipped tone she used for work. Vance? Chloe, it's bad, I said, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice and failing miserably. The cats, the community cats. I think someone's poisoning them. A beat of silence on the other end. Then, poisoning? Mike, are you sure? Where are you? Don't touch anything else. Don't let anyone else near. I'm sending a unit, and I'm coming. Her voice was all business, a world away from the sister who still brought up that time I superglued my hand to my G.I. Joe action figure when I was 8. As I waited, Patches a warm, worrying weight in my arms, my thoughts churned. This wasn't random. It couldn't be. The tension with our esteemed HOA president, Karen Smith, had been simmering for months, a nasty pot on the verge of boiling over. It started small, of course. It always does with Karens. Passive-aggressive notes about feral nuisances and unsanitary conditions tucked into mailboxes, typed in that infuriatingly self-important font she probably reserved for declarations of war. Then came the official HOA warnings, citing bylaws written in hieroglyphics no one understood, probably chiseled onto stone tablets by the original HOA Karen back in the Mesozoic era. I remembered the last HOA meeting like it was a particularly vivid nightmare. Karen, resplendent in a beige pantsuit that screamed managerial authority and I find joy in crushing souls, had been particularly fervent. Her voice, usually pitched to the level of a disgruntled mosquito, had risen to a near shriek. These cats are a menace. They are destroying property values. They are a blight on our otherwise pristine community. Something must be done. She'd slammed her gavel, a surprisingly hefty one for such a small woman, with the fervor of a general rallying her troops for a final, desperate charge. At the time, I'd rolled my eyes. Now, a cold dread settled in my stomach. Something must be done, she'd said. Had this been her something? The squeal of tires announced the first arrival. An animal control van. Not Chloe's official SUV, but a standard unit. Out hopped Officer Miller, young, earnest, looking like he'd rather be rescuing a kitten from a tree than dealing with whatever fresh hell this was. He was followed shortly by a local police cruiser, from which emerged Officer Davis, older, with a seen-it-all-twice-and-wasn't-impressed either time kind of weariness etched onto his face. "Sir, can you describe what you saw?" Officer Miller asked, flipping open a notepad. His pen hovered. "Any unusual substances? Anyone acting suspiciously?" I took a deep breath. Suspiciously? Only our HOA president, Karen Smith, who wages a holy war against anything with fur and 4 legs that isn't her yappy, over-pampered poodle, Princess Fluffybutt. Okay, maybe I added the Princess Fluffybutt part under my breath. Mostly. Officer Davis, who had ambled over, gave Miller a quiet look. "HOA dispute. Gets messy. Just get the facts, Miller." Then, to me, "You got any proof she did this, son? Or are we just talking bad blood?" Before I could answer, the devil herself appeared. Karen Smith, perfectly coiffed, even at this ungodly hour of unfolding tragedy, strode out of her identical townhouse, a vision in wrinkle-free lilac. Her expression was one of carefully curated concern, the kind an actress practices in the mirror for a deathbed scene. "Officer, what is all this commotion?" she trilled, her voice like nails on a chalkboard orchestra. "I trust you're dealing with the cat problem that's been plaguing our beautiful community?" She spotted me holding Patches, her eyes narrowing almost imperceptibly. Disdain, clear and pure, flickered across her face before being replaced by that mask of civic duty. "It's about time someone took this seriously," she continued, addressing the officers but clearly aiming her words like tiny, poisoned darts at me. "These animals are a health hazard. I've filed numerous complaints. They dig in gardens. They yowl at inappropriate hours." "Complaints or threats?" I shot back, my own temper starting to fray. Patches let out another weak whimper, and my protective instincts roared. "Because some of these cats are dying, Karen, dying!" Karen gasped, a hand flying to her chest in a gesture of pure, unadulterated melodrama. "Dying? Oh, how dreadful. Perhaps they ate some bad rodents. Nature can be so very cruel, can't it?" She offered a tight, utterly unsympathetic smile. The dramatic irony was so thick you could spread it on toast. She had no earthly idea who was about to pull up. And then, like a Valkyrie riding a chariot of sensible Japanese engineering, Chloe arrived. Her black animal control director SUV, official insignias gleaming, pulled smoothly to the curb. She stepped out, all sharp lines and authority in her uniform, sunglasses hiding her eyes but not the determined set of her jaw. Karen, in the middle of a diatribe about feline-borne diseases, faltered. She didn't recognize Chloe, didn't connect the dots. Not yet. Chloe ignored Karen for a crucial, beautiful moment, turning directly to Miller and Davis. "All right, what have we got? Status of the animals? Samples collected? Witness statements?" Her voice cut through the morning air, crisp and professional. Karen, never one to be upstaged, puffed herself up. "And you are?" she demanded, though her tone was now laced with a sliver of uncertainty. "Finally, someone from a higher authority. I'm Karen Smith, the Homeowners Association president. These feral cats, as I was just explaining to these officers." Chloe slowly turned, her sunglasses glinting. She took them off, and her eyes, the same Vance family blue as mine but currently about 1,000 times more intimidating, fixed on Karen. "Ma'am, I'm Chloe Vance, Director of County Animal Control." She paused, letting that sink in. Then, with a subtle, almost imperceptible nod towards me, she delivered the kicker. "And this gentleman," she gestured with her chin, "is my brother." Karen's face was a study in rapidly deflating self-importance. Her jaw didn't just drop, it practically unhinged. The color drained from her meticulously powdered cheeks, leaving her looking like a startled ghost in a lilac tracksuit. You could have heard a pin drop, or possibly one of Karen's cherished garden gnomes, spontaneously combusting from the sheer awkwardness. "So," Chloe continued, her voice dangerously calm, "tell me everything you know about these feral cats and their sudden, tragic illness, Mrs. Smith." I couldn't help it. A smirk tugged at my lips. "Yeah, Karen, tell her everything. I, for one, am all ears." The next hour was a blur of organized chaos, all orchestrated by Chloe. Officer Miller, looking relieved to have competent backup, started taking samples from the areas where the cats usually congregated. Near the communal bins, under Mrs. Gable's porch where she always left out fresh water, and yes, even near Karen's award-winning and suspiciously cat-free petunia patch. More neighbors started to trickle out, drawn by the flashing lights and the general air of suburban meltdown. Some, like Mrs. Gable, a sweet old lady with a heart as big as her collection of novelty teapots, were genuinely distraught. "Oh, those poor dears," she wailed, dabbing her eyes with a floral handkerchief. "I always leave out water for them. Patches, he loves to sit on my porch swing." Others, Karen's loyal sycophants, were less sympathetic. Mr. Perkins, a man whose primary personality trait seemed to be agreeing with Karen, tutted. "Well, they do dig up my prize petunias, you know. Karen has a point there, can't deny it." He conveniently ignored the fact that his petunias looked like they'd been mauled by a rabid badger, a state they were in long before the cats became public enemy number one. Chloe, calm amidst the budding storm, addressed the small crowd. "We're treating this as a potential animal cruelty case. If anyone has any information, no matter how small, please come forward." Her eyes, when she said this, lingered pointedly on Karen, who was attempting to look both innocent and deeply offended, a combination that made her resemble a constipated owl. Once the initial flurry died down, and Patches, along with 2 other sick cats, Mittens, sadly, hadn't made it, were on their way to the county vet clinic in an animal control ambulance, Chloe pulled me aside. "So you think she did it?" I asked, keeping my voice low. Chloe sighed, running a hand through her usually immaculate hair. "Legally, Mike, I can't say a damn thing yet. There are procedures, evidence, all that fun stuff." She lowered her voice even further. "Personally?" The woman radiates, "I hate cats, and possibly all small, joyful creatures vibes stronger than cheap perfume at a bingo hall. But we need proof, Mikey. Real, solid proof. Not just your gut feeling, as usually accurate as it is when it comes to neighborhood nut jobs." "What can I do?" I felt useless, pacing my small patch of a lawn. I can't just sit here and knit a protest banner. "Keep your eyes and ears open," she said. "Talk to people. You're the concerned resident, remember? The one who found them. People might tell you things they wouldn't tell an official, but, and I mean this, Mike, don't confront her directly. Don't go vigilante on me. Let us handle the official side." She gave me a stern look, the one that used to make me confess to eating the last cookie. "And try not to get arrested for TPing her prize-winning rose bushes, okay? The paperwork would be a nightmare." "No promises on the rose bushes," I muttered, earning a glare. Just then, the rhythmic thud of a hammer and the whine of a saw started up from my backyard. Sal and Vinny, the contractors I'd hired for a minor backyard renovation, were on site. My project? A new, significantly larger, and frankly awesome catio for my own 2 indoor cats, Leo and Cleo. Karen, naturally, had already lodged 3 official complaints about the unapproved structure and its potential to attract further vermin. The irony of her complaining about my well-contained beloved pets while potentially orchestrating a feline genocide in the front yard was not lost on me. Sal, a burly guy with a surprisingly gentle smile, ambled around the side of the house, wiping sweat from his brow. Vinny, leaner and with an perpetually amused glint in his eye, followed. "Morning, Mike," Sal said. Heard some ruckus. Everything all right? Define all right, I said, gesturing vaguely at the official vehicles and the lingering scent of drama. Man, your HOA lady is wound tighter than a banjo string, huh? Vinny observed, leaning against my fence. He'd seen Karen in action before, during one of her routine inspections, where she'd measured the height of my grass with a ruler. That's one way to put it, I said. She's currently suspect number 1 in a cat poisoning case. Sal whistled. No kidding, harsh. Vinny perked up. Hey, I saw her yesterday. Over by that community garden plot, the one near the woods where the strays usually hang out. She was spraying something, vigorously, like she was trying to exterminate an invisible army. My ears pricked up. Spraying what? Did you see the container, Vinny? This could be something. Vinny frowned, scratching his head. Nah, too far. Just a generic-looking spray bottle. But she looked like she was on a mission from, the Anti-Fluffy League of America. Thanks, guys. That's helpful. Actually, it was more than helpful. It was a lead. After Chloe and the other officers left, promising updates, I started my own subtle investigation. Operation Annoy Karen through the power of neighborly concern. I chatted with Mrs. Gable, who confirmed seeing Karen near the cat feeding spot, looking unusually furtive the previous evening. I casually strolled past the community trash cans, the ones closest to Karen's unit. And there, tucked beneath a pile of junk mail and empty yogurt containers, I found them. 2 empty bags of Rodent Rid Supreme Pest Repellent. The warning label was stark. Highly toxic to pets. Keep away from domestic animals. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just circumstantial anymore. Later that afternoon, an email pinged into my inbox. Subject, urgent. Emergency HOA meeting tonight. Community safety from Karen Smith, HOA president. Of course. She was calling an emergency meeting, ostensibly to address the tragic wildlife situation and the imperative need to ensure the safety and sanitation of our shared environment. In reality, I knew it was her attempt to control the narrative, play the concerned leader, and probably subtly blame the victims, the cats, or even us, their feeders. The meeting was held in the community clubhouse, a depressingly beige room that smelled faintly of stale coffee and shattered dreams. Karen stood at the podium, radiating false solemnity. As your president, she began, her voice oozing fake sympathy, I am deeply, deeply saddened by this unfortunate incident that has befallen some of our feral animal population. She paused for dramatic effect, dabbing a perfectly dry eye with a tissue. We must be more vigilant, more careful about what wildlife ingests. Perhaps it was tainted garbage from irresponsible residents not securing their bins properly. She shot a pointed glare at Mrs. Gable, who visibly bristled. I couldn't stay silent. Karen, I said, my voice calm but firm, drawing the attention of the 20 or so residents packed into the room. Some of us are concerned it might be more than just tainted garbage, especially since some very potent pest repellents, the kind that are extremely dangerous to pets, seem to have been used recently around the cat colony's usual spots. Karen's composure wavered for a split second. A flicker of something crossed her face. Fear? Annoyance? Pest control is a vital component of maintaining our community standards and property values, she retorted, her voice rising a notch. Are you suggesting, Mr. Vance, that I, or any other law-abiding resident of this esteemed community, would intentionally harm an animal? That's slander, pure and simple slander. What Karen hadn't counted on, or perhaps had forgotten in her self-righteous tirade, was that Chloe would be there. My sister, bless her strategic heart, had decided to attend, not in her official capacity making a scene, but as an observer, as she'd put it. She sat quietly at the back, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. But her mere presence, a silent, uniformed specter of animal control authority, made Karen visibly nervous. Karen kept flicking her eyes towards Chloe, her speech becoming slightly more disjointed. The meeting devolved into a barely controlled shouting match after that, with Karen's supporters echoing her outrage and the rest of us demanding answers. It achieved nothing, except maybe raising everyone's blood pressure. The next morning, Officer Davis dropped by my place. He leaned against his patrol car, looking tired. "Heard the HOA meeting was a regular three-ring circus last night." "You could say that?" I said, sipping my coffee. "Any news?" "Your sister's team is building a solid case," Davis said. "They found traces of the same chemical composition from that rodent-rid stuff in the soil samples near where the cats ate. The stuff Vinny saw Karen spraying? It's looking like a match, but motive and a direct, undeniable link. That's still a bit thin for the DA to jump on with both feet. And get this, Karen's lawyered up already. Claims she was spraying for particularly aggressive and invasive weeds that were threatening her prize-winning begonias. Invasive weeds that specifically target cats with laser-like precision, right?" My sarcasm was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Just saying, be careful, son," Davis advised, his eyes serious. "People get crazy over this HOA stuff, and when they feel cornered, they get even crazier." His words proved prophetic. That evening, taped to my front door, I found a typed, anonymous note. No fancy letterhead, just plain white paper. It read, "Stop meddling in affairs that don't concern you. Some animals are better off gone. For the good of the community. Consider this a friendly warning." Chills ran down my spine. But then another thought surfaced. Seriously, this is her A-game in intimidation, a politely worded threat? She could at least have used a more menacing font. Still, a warning was a warning. Things were escalating. Sal and Vinny were back at it the next day, the framework of my magnificent catio starting to take shape. They'd become surprisingly invested in the neighborhood cat-tastrophe. "So, we were thinking," Sal said, pausing from hammering a support beam, "that Karen lady, she's always watching everything, like a hawk with a bad perm and a clipboard." Vinny chimed in, "Yeah, maybe she slipped up. Or maybe she'll slip up again. We could, keep an extra eye out. From up on the ladder, you get a pretty good view of the whole cul-de-sac. For community safety, of course." He winked. "You guys are all right," I said, genuinely grateful. It was then that the idea struck me. If Karen was a creature of habit, if she was nervous, she might return to the scene of the crime, so to speak. "I'm going to set up a camera." I had a couple of those small, discreet wildlife cameras I sometimes used to see what critters were visiting my bird feeder before it became ground zero. I found one, charged it up, and that evening, under the cover of dusk, I positioned it carefully, hidden in a dense bush overlooking the area where the community cats were usually fed, the spot where Patches and the others had been found. For 2 days, the camera caught nothing but squirrels, a couple of amorous raccoons, and Mr. Henderson inexplicably trying to teach his poodle to fetch a frisbee at 3 a.m. And then, bingo. On the third night, the footage showed a figure, unmistakably Karen, emerging from her house well after midnight. She was wearing dark clothes, gloves, and carrying a bucket and sponge. She meticulously, almost obsessively cleaned the area where the food and water bowls had been, scrubbing the ground, looking over her shoulder every few seconds like a B-movie villain. She even seemed to be arguing with someone on her phone, her gestures agitated, her face tight with stress in the dim infrared light. It wasn't definitive proof of poisoning, not the smoking gun, but it was highly suspicious. Why would an innocent person be scrubbing a patch of communal dirt in the dead of night? I immediately sent the footage to Chloe. "Look at this," I said when I called her. She's practically scrubbing away the evidence with the enthusiasm of a crime scene cleaner in a mob movie. It's good, Mikey, Chloe admitted. It definitely shows intent to conceal something. It adds to the picture of her guilt. But it's still not the poison vial in her hand. The lab results on the actual food samples they managed to collect from the bowls and the toxicology reports from the affected cats. Those will be key. They're due back from the state lab tomorrow morning. Then came another piece of the puzzle, from an unexpected source. Whiskers, one of the younger cats from the colony, had thankfully only ingested a mild dose of whatever Karen had put out. He was recovering at the local vet, his bill being covered by a hastily organized GoFundMe spearheaded by Mrs. Gable and, myself. The vet called me. Mr. Vance, just a quick update on Whiskers. He's doing much better, but we found something odd caught in his fur when we were giving him a bath. A small plastic tag, brightly colored. Looks like it might be from a plant. Does that mean anything to you? My mind flashed to Karen's meticulously maintained, award-winning garden. She was famous in the neighborhood for her exotic and undoubtedly expensive plants. Each one was probably tagged and cataloged like a museum piece. Can you describe the tag? I asked, my heart starting to thump a little faster. Or better yet, text me a picture of it. A minute later, my phone buzzed. The picture showed a small, bright orange plastic tag with some kind of botanical name printed on it in tiny letters. A very specific, expensive-looking plant tag. The kind you wouldn't find on your average marigold. The kind Karen, with her prize-winning flora, would absolutely use. Things were starting to connect. Beautifully. Horribly. The next morning, my phone rang. It was Chloe, and I could hear the suppressed triumph in her voice even before she spoke. "We got her, Mikey," she said, foregoing any preamble. "The lab results are in. The poison residue from the food bowls, it's a perfect match for the commercial-grade toxin in that rodent-rid stuff you found. And guess what else it matches?" "The plant tag?" I ventured, already knowing the answer. "Bingo. The residue on that orange plant tag from Whisker's fur? Same stuff. They even identified the specific rare orchid it belongs to from the botanical name. An orchid that, according to our preliminary, and very discreet, drive-by observations, is currently blooming rather conspicuously in a certain HOA president's front garden." She paused. "It's go time. Operation Takedown. The tyrant was a go. Chloe, along with Officer Davis and a rather stern-looking Officer Miller, armed with an official warrant, prepared to pay Karen a little visit. A visit to search her property, specifically her garage and shed, for the poison itself and any other incriminating evidence. My role in this grand finale? To be coincidentally outside, checking on the progress of my KTO, with Sal and Vinny. We all just happened to have an excellent vantage point from my driveway, directly across from Karen's front door. Popcorn would have been appropriate, but we settled for feigned nonchalance. Karen answered the door, initially feigning surprise. "Director Vance! Officer Davis! To what do I owe this intrusion?" she asked, her voice dripping with forced politeness, though a muscle twitched in her cheek. "Mrs. Smith," Chloe said, her tone all business, "we have a warrant to search your property in connection with an ongoing animal cruelty investigation." She held up the document. Karen's eyes bulged. "A warrant?" she screeched, the politeness vanishing like mist on a hot day. "This is an outrage, harassment. I am a respected member of this community. I have rights. I am calling my lawyer this instant." "You can call whoever you like, ma'am," Officer Davis said, his voice calm but unyielding. "But we're coming in." They didn't have to search for long. Hidden behind a stack of terracotta pots and bags of organic mulch in her meticulously organized garage, they found it. A nearly empty, large container of rodent-rid supreme pest repellent. The smoking gun, Or, well, the smoking poison container. But the pièce de résistance, the cherry on top of this sundae of suburban villainy, was what Officer Miller found tucked away on a shelf. A small, spiral-bound notebook. He held it up with gloved hands, an expression of disbelief on his young face. Director? Officer Davis? You might want to see this. It's detailed. Chloe and Davis peered at it. I could only imagine. Karen, it turned out, had been meticulously logging cat infractions with dates, times, and her own colorful commentary on the property damage and emotional distress caused. Things like October 17th, 10:32. AM, Fluffy Tabby, codename Menace-1, observed napping on my prize-winning begonia. Unacceptable, severe emotional toll. Or November 3rd, 2:15 p.m. Striped miscreant. Codename The Digging Dervish, dared to scratch at base of magnolia tree. Grounds for immediate relocation. To another planet. She even had a crudely drawn map of the neighborhood, with little X's marking the cat colony's favorite hangouts and escape routes. It was the diary of a deranged, cat-hating Bond villain. Realizing she was well and truly caught, cornered by the evidence and her own obsessive record-keeping, Karen finally, spectacularly, unraveled. It wasn't a quiet, dignified crumbling. Oh no. It was a full-blown, screeching, arm-waving, it was for the good of the community tantrum. "They were ruining everything!" she shrieked, her face contorted, the carefully constructed mask of the concerned HOA president shattering into 1,000,000 pieces. "My petunias! The pristine lawns! The property values! Someone had to do something. You should be thanking me. I was protecting our investments." Mike to Sal and Vinny, sotto voce, as Karen was practically vibrating with rage. And the Oscar for Best Dramatic Freakout by a crazed suburbanite goes to... Sal snorted, trying to cover it with a cough. Officer Davis, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else but also grimly satisfied, stepped forward with the handcuffs. "Karen Smith, you're under arrest for multiple counts of animal cruelty and reckless endangerment." "You can't do this to me!" Karen wailed, tears of pure fury now streaming down her face, ruining her expensive makeup. "I'm the HOA president. I have connections. Do you know who my husband plays golf with?" She was still shouting about her connections and her petunias as she was led, less than gracefully, to the waiting police car. Chloe caught my eye over the roof of the departing cruiser. She gave a subtle, almost imperceptible nod. Her expression, though professional, clearly said, "Told you. Never underestimate a Vance when they're on a mission." The neighborhood, as you can imagine, was buzzing louder than a hornet's nest kicked by a mule. Karen was out on bail by nightfall. Her husband apparently did play golf with someone important enough, but her reign of terror was definitively over. The HOA, predictably, was in utter disarray. Vice President Perkins looked like he'd seen a ghost and was now desperately trying to remember how to run a meeting without Karen's iron fist and detailed agenda. "I always knew she was a nasty piece of work, deep down," Mrs. Gable declared to anyone who would listen, now emboldened. Poor, poor kiddies. To think living next to such wickedness. Mr. Perkins, Karen's former chief crony, was now performing Olympic-level backpedaling. "Well, I never approved of harming animals, of course not," he stammered when I saw him at the community mailbox. "Just, general tidiness, property upkeep." She could be a bit zealous, perhaps. He practically scurried away. Sal and Vinny were putting the finishing touches on the catio, which, if I did say so myself, was looking less like a cat enclosure and more like a feline pleasure palace. 4 levels, sisal-wrapped scratching posts, a tiny hammock, and even a little plexiglass bubble window for optimal birdwatching. "So, Guess you won't be needing that guard tower feature with the miniature crossbow we talked about for the Catio anymore, huh, Mike? Sal asked, a grin playing on his lips. Vinny chuckled. Yeah, the dragon's been slain. Or, arrested and probably forced to attend court-mandated anger management for crimes against fluffiness. Nah, guys, build the guard tower, I said, feeling a surge of magnanimity. My cats deserve a fortress, and maybe a tiny moat. For keeping out particularly audacious squirrels, one can never be too careful. The best part? News of Karen's arrest, and more deliciously, excerpts from her cat infraction notebook and the crudely drawn map, somehow got leaked to the local online news blog. Anonymously, of course. I wouldn't dream of pointing a finger at, say, a disgruntled former HOA board member who Karen had once publicly shamed for having mismatched patio furniture. The blog post went viral in our little corner of the world. Karen became an overnight local laughingstock. Her picture, a particularly unflattering one taken mid-rant during her arrest, was an instant meme. The Petunia Poisoner of Primrose Lane. It had a certain ring to it. A few days later, Officer Davis stopped by again, looking a little less weary than usual. Heard your sister's pushing for the DA to throw the book at her. Good on her. And, thanks for that wildlife cam footage. It really helped establish her pattern of obsessive behavior and her presence at the scene. Any time, officer, I said. Glad to see justice, even if it's for a bunch of alley cats, my personal sanity, and the integrity of Mrs. Henderson's azaleas. He actually cracked a smile at that. Progress. Weeks turned into a couple of months. The surviving community cats, including Patches and Whiskers, were fully recovered, sleek and sassy as ever. The whole ugly incident, surprisingly, had a silver lining. The community, perhaps shamed by what had happened under their noses, or maybe just inspired by Chloe's no-nonsense efficiency and my stubborn refusal to let it go, actually came together. A committee was formed. I somehow ended up on it, naturally. We designed and built proper, discreet, and HOA-approved, a miracle in itself, feeding stations and little insulated shelters for the cat colony, tucked away in a quiet corner of the common green space. A local TNR, Trap Neuter Return group, got involved, and several of the friendlier cats, including a sweet little ginger kitten who'd somehow survived the ordeal unscathed, were even adopted into loving homes. One Saturday morning, I was out with Chloe, watching a group of volunteers put the finishing touches on the main shelter, a rather smart-looking wooden structure that Vinny and Sal had helped design and build at a discount. Who knew, I said, leaning against a newly planted maple tree, that almost losing a bunch of strays would actually bring this god-forsakenly beige neighborhood together? Chloe smiled, a genuine, non-professional smile this time. Sometimes it takes a common enemy, even if that enemy is a middle-aged woman with a pathological hatred of anything that sheds and an unhealthy obsession with bylaws. She nudged me with her elbow. You did good, big brother, despite almost giving me several heart attacks and nearly derailing a major investigation with your enthusiasm. Hey, I said, feigning offense. Keeping you on your toes is part of my charm, and my enthusiasm is legendary. As for Karen, her fall from HOA grace was swift and brutal. Faced with overwhelming evidence and the very real prospect of jail time, she pleaded guilty to lesser charges of animal cruelty and improper use of pesticides. She got a hefty fine, 1,000 hours of community service, which, in a stroke of beautiful karmic justice, she was assigned to perform at an animal shelter on the other side of the county, one specializing in, you guessed it, cats, and was forced to resign from the HOA presidency in disgrace. The "For Sale" sign in front of her house went up less than a week later. Rumor had it she was moving to a remote, cat-free island. One could only hope. With Karen gone, a new era dawned upon our little suburban enclave. Mrs. Gable, bless her tea-loving heart, was overwhelmingly elected as the new HOA president. Her first official act: to declare the following Saturday Community Cat Appreciation Day, complete with a bake sale to raise funds for cat food and vet care. Mr. Perkins was even spotted donating a tray of slightly lopsided but undoubtedly cat-themed cupcakes. Wonders never cease. So here I am, a few months down the line. It's a sunny afternoon. I'm relaxing in my backyard, a cold beer in hand. Leo and Cleo are thoroughly enjoying their magnificent multi-level catio, occasionally batting at a daring squirrel from the safety of their guard tower. Sal and Vinny had really outdone themselves. Sal and Vinny are here too, sharing a beer with me, admiring their handiwork and the general peace that had settled over the neighborhood. A few of the community cats, Patches among them, are lounging nearby in a sunny patch of grass, safe, sound, and looking remarkably well fed. "You know," Sal said, breaking the comfortable silence, "for a while there, this neighborhood was crazier than a sack of weasels at a disco." Vinny nodded sagely. "Yeah, but it all worked out in the end. Cats are happy. Crazy Petunia lady's gone. And this catio?" He gestured expansively. "Thing of beauty, Mike. A veritable feline Taj Mahal." I took a long sip of my beer, watching Patches lazily swat at a passing butterfly. "Yeah, guys," I said, a genuine grin spreading across my face. "It really is." I thought about Karen and her reign of flowery terror. I thought about Chloe, kicking butt and taking names and poison samples. I thought about the sheer, unadulterated absurdity of it all. A quiet life? Not in this neighborhood. "Never a dull moment," I muttered to myself, shaking my head. Now, if I could just figure out who keeps letting their dog poop on Mr. Grumble's prize-winning petunias. Because that, my friends, is a whole other story.